Hello, today is January 12th, 2022, and you're watching The Pipeline on the Western Standard. Thank you very much for joining us this evening. I'm Derek Feldbrandt, publisher of the Western Standard. Today I'm joined, as always, by Western Standard news editor Dave Naylor. How you doing, Dave?
I was doing okay until I came into the studio and you were singing Sound of Music.
I've never done that. You know, I visited.
Yes,
starting the scales.
Oh, yeah. I actually visited Salzburg in Austria in 2012, and I didn't know what the Sound of Music was. I was walking around the city, and I'm like, why the hell is there Sound of Music tours everywhere and mementos everywhere? I had no idea. And then I watched the movie on the plane coming back, and I was like, oh, that makes sense. Also joined by Western Standard assistant opinion and broadcast editor and host of Triggered with Cory Morgan. Cory Morgan.
Good day.
Well, we've got a good show, as always, for you today, but I think today is really going to get you triggered. We're going to be talking about Federal Health Minister Duclos's putting mandatory vaccination on the Canadian agenda. Duclos says it's happening elsewhere. Austria, speaking of Austria, and bad men coming to your houses for papers. Yes. See, that was a segue,
Good segue, eh?
Yeah, great segue. I like to pat myself on the back when I get a good one like that.
Singing on the way.
Yeah. Mandatory vaccination. And following closely after that is Quebec Premier Francois Legault bringing in the Vax Tax. If you're not vaccinated in Quebec, banning you from living your life as a normal human being is no longer good enough. The vaccine passport, well, those of you who feared that that's just where it starts, well, you were right. Quebec will be bringing in a vaccination tax. If you are an undesirable in Quebec, you're going to have to pay for the privilege of being there. What else was it? Oh, yes. Speaking of insane people from Quebec.
Another good segue.
Hey-o.
Another good. You're 2 for 2.
Speaking of insane people from Quebec, insane liberals, insane Quebecers, Mr. Stephen Guilbeault. Is that how you say his name?
Guilbeault.
I don't know.
Yeah,
What did you say?
Nothing.
James, make a note. We're putting that in the Starfish nominations for the year. Mr. Guilbeault, that's I think how you say it. That's what I'm going with. Said, Ottawa's going to phase out fossil fuels within 2 years. Also, I'm traveling to Uranus, and Dave is now publisher of the Calgary Sun.
There you go.
There you go. We've declared it.
Yes.
So it shall be so.
2 years from now.
2 years. Actually, the taking over the Sun's not actually entirely impossible.
No.
Not in the state it is today. Okay. Well, before we get going, I want to thank all of our Western Standard members for your continued support. We are so grateful for everything you do for us. With your subscriptions, with your memberships, we're able to put together a great team, a great newsroom who's churning out some of the best stories of Western Canada and across Canada, great opinion columnists, and of course, great broadcasters like Cory Morgan and his new show, Triggered. If you're not yet a member of the Western Standard, please go to westernstandardonline.com and click on membership. It's you can try it free for 15 days. If you don't like it, just cancel it. You don't have to pay a penny. But if you do like it and you want to continue with it, it's just $10 a month or $99 a year. I promise you, it's the best money you're going to spend in at least this month. All right. And today's show is sponsored by Algodex. Algodex is a cutting-edge technology available to Westerners and people around the globe. It's actually a Calgary-based company, but it's actually taking off globally. This is a cryptocurrency that they are working to make functional. A lot of cryptocurrencies are excellent hedges against inflation, against government fiat money being watered down by government printing too damn much and borrowing out the wazoo. But Algodex is a company working to make cryptocurrencies usable for everyday purchases. Can you imagine going to buy your coffee and being able to pay not using phony federal Canadian dollars? It's a fantastic company born right here in Calgary, but taking off globally, making cryptocurrencies accessible and usable for everyday users, for everyday purchases. It's really one of the next big things in the cryptocurrency world. I know we're all big fans of it here. Just today, I think some of us around the office, we made decisions to take part of our salaries in cryptocurrency. This is the way it's going. I'd rather take some of my salary in funds that is not going to be diluted down by next week by the federal government. Federal dollar is not the way to go. So check it out. Well, let's get started. Mandatory vaccination. Surely things will never go there. Defenders of vaccine passports said this vaccine passports are necessary because if you're unvaccinated, you're going to spread COVID to other people more than if you're vaccinated. They never said that, right, Cory? They never actually said that?
A few folks actually said that it was going to stop the spread. I believe I
Stop
played
the
a
spread.
video clip of that once before.
So as we know, the science, the data is looking pretty clear at this point. If you're vaccinated, it is less likely that you'll be hospitalized. But vaccinated and unvaccinated alike, there is no difference whatsoever in transmission. You are just as likely to contract or transmit COVID, vaccinated and unvaccinated. YouTube, I am not giving health advice, and I would never contradict the advice of the World Health Organization or Alberta Health Services, our local health authorities. I apologize, repent for anything I say involving COVID and vaccinations is a joke and should not be taken seriously. So with that out of the way, yeah, it's bullshit. It's clearly not doing anything for transmission. The whole vaccine passport was brought in to keep us safe. The idea is to keep us safe so that the unvaccinated masses don't infect us. Turns out that's not it. Not good enough. Now it's about ICU capacity, as if the government monopoly over healthcare is the fact of individuals making personal healthcare choices. So now Ottawa, so we're not going to get into Quebec yet. We're going to start with Ottawa. Health Minister, was it Jean-Yves Duclos, says it's a conversation we need to have. Dave, why don't you tell us exactly what the Federal Minister of Health said?
Sounds like Inspector Clouseau in a way, doesn't it?
Yeah,
Duclos?
I thought it sounded familiar.
You notice that
Clouseau, that's
all
it.
of these imbecilic Clouseau-esque politicians are all from Quebec.
Yes.
We've got a problem here, but there's a pattern.
Derek, Canadians have been watching what's happening around the world. Places like Austria that are making the vaccine mandatory. Places like Germany that are heavily considering making it mandatory. Italy, where anybody who wants to work, have a job over the age of 50 has to be vaccinated. And our health minister, federal health minister Duclos, set heads exploding across the country on Monday when he sent up an obvious trial balloon. They were sort of floating policy, and he said the provinces should consider bringing in laws to make it mandatory, because of course healthcare is provincial jurisdiction. Yeah. So of course that caused heads to explode, as I said, and to me it's just a matter of time before it comes in. It was obviously, the provincial government used to do this all the time. They would send out a trial balloon with one of their favorite columnists. They would breathlessly report it, and 2 weeks later they would bring it in if they got a good response from the public. But yeah, it's we never thought we'd 2 years ago we never thought we'd get into this situation, but we are here now, no doubt about it.
This is, as I said in my column the other day, this is the point of no return. Like, there's not much further you can go beyond here. I suppose there's degrees of mandatory, because it is already mandatory. Let's be clear. We already have mandatory vaccination. If you want to go to a restaurant, like a normal free human being would do, you must be vaccinated. You want to go buy a coffee, you want to go to the theater, you want to do any of these things, you must be vaccinated, even though the data is now amply clear that you're just as likely to transmit COVID or contract COVID if you're vaccinated or not. There is no difference there. So the whole protecting other people argument clearly doesn't wash anymore. They're now down solely to the ICU capacity argument, and that's the fault of governments, not of individuals. It's not the fault of individuals that Canada has a status monopoly healthcare system that is unable to adapt to anything, even after 2 years of this. I mean, we've been operating on, Canada's healthcare system has been operating right on the edge of capacity long before COVID. This is a new thing, not a new thing.
Is typical. That's pre-COVID.
Yeah.
And even with 2 years of it, they still can't get ICUs under control. Why didn't they do an ICU surge at the start and just keep it there?
Cory, I mean, this was kind of a fever dream. This was, there's no way, I mean, even I didn't think they'd go this far a month ago. But the thing is to keep on moving the goalposts further and further.
And I mean, I think we might be, though. I'm trying to hold a kind of weird optimism out of this, hitting a critical mass tipping point, and the real authoritarian, almost cultists on this control and getting people vaccinated are getting desperate because we're starting to see some new numbers and we're starting to see some changes out of authorities. We're not talking about weird blog sites and YouTube University. The European Union, as recently, that just broke this morning, said, oh, hold on, we got some studies showing that actually if we keep doing these boosters, there could be some adverse effects to people's immune systems from it. I mean, they're not saying stop yet.
YouTube, we are not giving medical advice. We are not contradicting the medical advice of the World Health Organization or Alberta Health Services or any other local health authorities. This is Cory telling a joke, we assure you.
But I mean, that's what they released from the European Union. And then the Center for Disease Control out of Atlanta put out striking numbers just a few hours ago because they've gotten the studies in on the Omicron variant. And it's, as we've been seeing pretty much all over, a greatly reduced chance of actually harming somebody, 94% less chance of killing somebody than Delta, which was already an infinitely tiny number. And these numbers are getting public and they're coming from strong authorities, the Centers for Disease Control, the European Union Health Authority, not fringe things. Mm-hmm. So this really undercuts a lot of that case because, for example, we had Premier Notley tweeting today saying we need to start vaccinating kids right in the class because we're not doing it fast enough. Well, when we're looking at those numbers, the chances of a child being harmed by the Omicron variant, they got a better chance of being hit by a meteor. And I think people are paying attention and they're saying, well, hang on here. I mean, and that's why like I said, the almost obsessive vaxxed ones, like our health minister federally, it's rather than reasoning, they're doubling down. They're saying we got to get those needles in the arms before people change their minds. That's not a good way to go.
And coming back to this earlier, there was an argument, even though it wasn't supported by the data, but it was. I was hopeful, at least, that having a large percentage of the population vaccinated would stop transmission. That was the hope. That was my hope. That was really the intent. One of the main intentions of it. It turns out the vaccine is really just good for mitigating how sick you're going to get if you get COVID.
It's still good.
It's a good thing. I think it's still a positive. But it's certainly not killing COVID. I mean, so the COVID zero cultists, they're left spinning their wheels here. It's no longer actually vaccination as a prudent public health measure. It is now vaccination as virtue signaling. It is just showing that you're part of it. It's like wearing your mask. We know
rid of this thing.
We know that, not that I'm giving health advice, Mr. YouTube, but the mask doesn't do anything. It's there for show. It's there to show that you're taking this seriously and that we're all in this together. It's a badge of support for the cause. It's like wearing a ribbon on Seinfeld. Why aren't you wearing the ribbon? Yeah. So the vaccine's almost started to become that, which is unfortunate because I think it still does have important benefits, but it's now just a sign of compliance with the COVID zero cultists who will never win because there's going to be no such thing as COVID zero probably for a very long time.
Obviously not.
All right. Well, then we'll transition from maniacs in Quebec maniacs in Ottawa to just Quebec maniacs in Quebec. Quebec Premier François Legault, I guess, took his cues from Ottawa and said, okay, this is a conversation you want to have. Well, Quebec is going to be the first to take you up on this. He's announced the Vax Tax. Tell us about the Vax Tax, Dave.
Well, he's saying, Derek, that 90% of the hospital cases in Quebec are the unvaccinated. And the 10% that are vaccinated should not have to pay the cost of the unvaccinated. So he's bringing in a health tax. Hasn't said what it is yet, but anybody who's unvaccinated is going to have to pay a significant tax. A couple $100, a couple $1,000, I don't know. Again, people's heads blew up all across the country because if Quebec can do it, why not all the other provinces? Mm-hmm. So we quickly had Jason Kenney's office issue a statement saying he would never, ever do it here. He said something about vaccine passports along the same lines. That was never going to happen.
He's never flip-flopped on any of these things.
No, not that. So, yeah, and lawyers, John Carpe from the Justice Center, Justice Center
for Constitutional Freedoms.
Yes. He's vowed to file a lawsuit the day that the law is enacted or becomes law in Quebec. And there's all sorts of, Cory hit it up on his show today. This would defeat the Canada Health Act. This would make the Health Act meaningless. So this is certainly a historical thing that they're trying to do in Quebec.
There is a part of me that is happy to see the Canada Health Act blown up. It's a terrible piece of legislation. The Canadians have this cult-like respect for it. They revere this thing, even though, we have a very expensive healthcare system with very, very mediocre outcomes. We don't have a terrible system on a global scale. Compared to other developed countries, though, we are nowhere near the top of the pack.
And dropping.
And we have amongst the most expensive systems. And but Canadians are kind of cultishly devoted to this. It's just a sign of national identity because the Americans don't have it. There's really only two healthcare systems in the world, people. Canada and America. There is no other countries don't have healthcare at all. There's only two models. Part of me wants to see the Canada Health Act blown up, but this seems to be almost the opposite way of doing it. Destroying the Canada Health Act should be done by allowing freedom of choice. Instead, this is actually quite the opposite. It's getting rid of universal healthcare in form of still a government, like a status monopoly of healthcare, but introducing direct discrimination in healthcare. Any country any Supreme Court worth its salt would clearly strike this down as unconstitutional and discriminatory beyond just the Canada Health Act, because that's not part of the Constitution. Cory, this is obviously going to face quick and swift court challenges. What do you think the chances are that the Supreme Court actually lands on the right side here? Or do you think they're just going to back the government?
I don't know anymore. 2 years ago, I would have said this wouldn't even be considered. It's like we're talking about with other things, but now with the courts, and they just seem to be willing to follow the panic and say it's for the public good, and we're going to set aside rule of law and allow these things to happen to people. I don't feel as confident that a justice would strike this down as they should, or that Quebec would even care. They've never exactly been known for paying attention to what federal court judges tell them.
Well, they can introduce the notwithstanding clause.
Yeah.
Quebec is the only
cases, but
this would be a charter case.
Yeah, I guess
this would be a charter case, so that would apply. But Quebec is the only province that's ever invoked the notwithstanding clause. Other provinces seem to not be allowed to use it.
Well, let me ask you guys: if you were the 10% of unvaccinated people in Quebec, does the threat of a $1,000 tax make you rush to the jab station, or does it harden your position? Does it say, all right, screw you, government. You're coming after my money now, I'm going to hunker down even more?
Yeah, we're at the point where pretty much everybody who is no longer vaccinated, or people have very strong feelings against it. They have personal feelings. They believe it may harm them, or they just, on another point of principle. But if they've gone this far, they've been chased out of restaurants, they've been chased off their jobs, they've been chased away from sports, they can't travel.
Can't walk their dog.
Yeah, can't walk your dog after 10. By the way, send that poop to the legislature. They're not going to bend now. So this is just punishing them further. It's just beating them down.
It's not going to do anything.
Fixing anything.
It's clear politics. As I said, there's different levels of mandatory here. It is already mandatory because you're now completely shut out of society unless you've managed to get your hands on a less than authentic version of a vaccine passport.
Speaking with the Canadian Taxpayers Federation representative in Quebec, Renaud, what's his last name?
Brassard.
Yes. But he was talking about that. There is a black market of counterfeit vaccination papers.
I've never seen anyone with any. I've never seen any of these. I'm not aware of anyone in my life with one.
This is just a rumor I've heard about. But I've heard humans are pretty good and show some pretty good ingenuity when it comes to things like that.
But I guess clearly a tax is not going to work. The only level after that, and the only way actually for the federal government to directly impose a vaccine passport, mandatory vaccination to the next level, would actually be to declare it a crime, to put it into the Criminal Code of Canada. I don't know what they call it, medical non-compliance, probably come up with some silly bureaucratic term like that. They would have to put it into the Criminal Code of Canada. So, which is implausible, although we always think these things are implausible, and then like a couple of months later, their policy.
What happens if they bring in the War Measures Act? Can they do it under that?
Yeah, but you would have to arrest 10% plus of Canada that would be more than the rest of the prison population of the planet combined, I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure it'd be pretty difficult to imprison a tenth of the country. And I have a suspicion that that tenth of the country disproportionately owns more than a tenth of the guns. I have a difficult time seeing how this is going to be executed very peacefully.
Yeah, well, and as you said, the lawyers are chomping at the bit. I'm sure they've got their challenges all lined up. It's just a matter of setting the date for the second they try to impose that legislation. It's going to be in there. As it was said, it could take up to 18 months or something to get through the courts. But the first thing they're going to seek is an injunction. They're going to say, hold on, stop this right now until we hear it. And I would think a judge would grant an injunction.
But all the injunction seekers have so far failed. They
might get 24 hours here and there, but that's it.
Yeah, but that's it. They've always failed, and they've always said, the government can basically do what they want for their.
Well, the courts have been insane. Like, so, Canada's constitution really is hardly written worth the paper it's written on. There's all these great rights and freedoms that are listed in the charter here. And then it's got this wiggle stuff. These are all subject to things that are reasonable in a free and democratic society. Reasonable limitations. Well, the government has a very broad definition of what are reasonable limitations. And when these things have come to court and constitutional lawyers, guys like the JCCF and others who have been out there, the government lawyers say that, we're justified. And the courts have very rarely actually required government to produce data, to actually produce testimony, actually prove that these are reasonable limitations on freedoms in a free and democratic society. They're just not held to the same standard as they normally would. The courts seem to be hyper politicized and fearful of going against the state in limiting any of these powers.
Scary place.
Well, speaking of guns, our other sponsor today is the Canadian Shooting Sports Association. I love these guys. Check out their website, cssa-cila.org. The Canadian Shooting Sports Association are great folks. I've been a member for, I think over a decade now. These folks are the premier firearms rights organization in Canada. They're out there lobbying politicians, making sure that they understand smart firearms legislation. And in the case of many politicians, where having a frank discussion with them is probably not going to do much. They've got ideological reasons because guns are scary. They look scary. They make liberals wet their pants. They run some of the best advocacy campaigns in Canada and fighting for your right to own, use, purchase, and collect firearms. So you guys should absolutely become a member of this organization. Go to cssa-cila.org and check out their membership section. I've been a member long before these guys were a sponsor here, long before the Western Standard was even back in publication. So I actually am not just being paid to say this, although they are paying me to say this. It's very much worth it. I love these guys standing on guard for your right to own and use firearms in Canada. Check them out. Speaking of insanity of models, see,
we've got a pattern here today.
You see the great transitions.
We should have mandatory medication of lithium for our politicians, and I bet we would suddenly get some better policy out of those guys.
Lithium. You think that's going to do it?
It could help. I mean, these guys are nuts.
I'd rather give them tranquilizers.
Well, it'll sedate.
I'd rather sedate them.
Yeah.
I think that'd be fine. I'd rather them do nothing. I like when people say,
you just promote them all to the Senate immediately.
Yes, everyone should be a senator. When people say, the government's doing nothing, I'm like, that's great. Yeah. Remember when Belgium didn't have a government for a few years? Best few years Belgium ever had. It was great. No one could do anything. Perfect. Gridlock is my goal in politics. I just want gridlock. I want the government to do nothing. They do nothing, I'm pretty happy. Okay, so back to maniacs in Ottawa. Federal Environment and Climate Change Minister Stephen Guilbeault says that Ottawa, the federal Liberals, are going to phase out fossil fuels in 2 years. Dave, what else do you wish for in 2 years?
Do you only get one wish?
No. You're Ottawa. You get whatever you want. Just grant it and make it legislation in itself.
All right. Well, to go along with Guilbeault getting rid of fossil fuels in 2 years, I'll get rid of winter. So,
I like that one.
Well, that seems to be kind of actually in opposition because it's going to take some global warming to get rid of winter.
Well, we'll just give it to somebody else.
So Guilbeault makes this announcement. He's going to get rid of fossil fuels in 2 years. Of course, he doesn't provide any specifics, but he does admit, hey, it may cost more. It may cost you some more. So Aaron O'Toole, the leader of the opposition, saw this clip and immediately ran outside with his film crew and did a video on a chilly Ottawa day, and standing in front of the Eternal Flame, the House of Commons in the background. And he's got his big winter Parker on, and he just rightly mocks Stephen Guilbeault left, right, and center, saying it's ridiculous. You know, how can you get rid of fossil fuels in a winter country in less than 2 years when basically all we've really taken is baby steps?
Yeah.
You know, we put in a few electrical power stations, sold a few electric cars, but what we've done so far is minuscule. And he's talking about getting rid of it in 2 years.
Well, I was really
luck,
impressed with O'Toole. On the steps of Parliament there, he said he's going to get rid of the carbon tax.
Oh, yes. No,
he didn't say that.
I didn't say that.
No, that was during the Conservative leadership.
Yes.
Yes.
And then he flip-flopped in the campaign.
Ah, shit. Well, he has said he's not going to phase out fossil fuels.
Or at least he'll take 4 years to do it, perhaps.
Yeah, he'll do a more moderate version, I'm sure. Yeah. Cory, we don't even need to talk about how insane this is. We know it's insane. It obviously isn't going to be done. I mean, so that's kind of the silver lining here is, well, it's impossible.
Yeah,
like short of like a Pol Pot march everyone into the forest, it's impossible.
It's as ridiculous as, unfortunately, getting rid of winter would be. It's just not going to happen. Getting rid of fossil fuel use in 2 decades is probably impossible right now. But the chilling part is this isn't just your run-of-the-mill nutcase running around. This
It's the environment minister.
Is our environment minister. He has some degree of authority to actually try to accomplish this. I mean, he won't accomplish it, but he sure can beat the hell out of us trying. And we should be very concerned. We should, considering how unrealistic, ideological, and clearly deranged this guy is. How could you even say we could get rid of this in 2 years? This is
Well, how many Albertans would that make unemployed in 2 years? 2 years from now? How many oil patch workers become unemployed?
Well, then indirectly, I'd say a majority of Albertans would be unemployed.
Exactly.
And our houses, we'd actually have to leave Alberta because it would be uninhabitable.
We'd be employed building the wall on the east boundary, because I got a feeling that would finally be enough to say, you know what, Quebec and the rest of your associates in Ottawa, go to hell.
You know what? I'm all of a sudden in favor of Ottawa trying to phase out fossil fuels. If this is what it finally takes us to finally pick up some pitchforks and maybe some shovels and trowels and build a wall, you know what? It actually could. Like if Ottawa tried to do it, like it would knock out tens of thousands of people in direct unemployment, hundreds and hundreds of thousands indirectly. It would be beyond. The Great Depression would look like nothing. Well, it would be apocalypse.
Let's play to Enbridge. You know what? Shut down Line 5 for service for 2 weeks. That's all.
Yeah. Let's just see what it's
winter.
like.
Just shut it down for a couple weeks. Clean it out. You know, put some pipe cleaners in there. Run a pig or two up and down it. That's all. And just do that. And give them a taste. Just taste.
I propose we end fossil fuels in Eastern Canada now, like right now. Let's just stop it right now. Let them know what they're in for.
Yeah. As Cory says, this guy's not a wingnut. Well, he is a wingnut, but he's not one of a normal wingnut. He's got power. He's one of the most powerful politicians in Canada.
He's a senior member.
He's a senior member of Trudeau's government, so he can sit in his office all day thinking wackadoodle ideas to kill the fossil fuel industry and do them and put them into process, put them into action.
Mm-hmm. It's frightening. Rational.
It's frightening.
Well, remember, and this is the same guy who, before he was environment minister, was the heritage minister. And what was his main accomplishment? Censorship bills of the internet. This is the minister who has been driving the agenda on censoring the internet, particularly trying to take down people who just disagree with liberals, disagree with the government. This guy is mad. He is insane and he is dangerous.
And Prime Minister Hammerhead keeps him in a senior position in Ottawa, along with a health minister who wants mandatory vaccination. I'm getting very concerned about this government. It is a minority government. I mean, he doesn't even have a majority to push this, and he's that arrogant.
And the opinion polls still have him leading. Trudeau's not plunging at all. No. I don't understand why the rest of the country is not waking up. Why Eastern Canada is not waking up and saying, Hey, you know what? We're already paying, Vancouver is paying close to $1.70 a liter in gas. With the carbon tax upcoming, you're still going to be paying $2 a liter for gasoline.
They're not going to wake up. I mean, I was talking to Wagner the other day about when I was 29 and leading the Alberta Independence Party because Ottawa wasn't waking up. I had no gray hair in those pictures from back there. Look at it now, and it's gotten no better. If not, it's getting worse. It's not Ottawa that's going to wake up. They won't. It's us.
Well, back then, we at least had the Reform Party and the Canadian Alliance. We at least had a party that represented the West and at least from time to time put the fear of God in the East. Today, we've got...
anybody heard of the Maverick Party, Layla?
Well, we've got Aaron O'Toole.
Leadership.
We've got Aaron O'Toole to scare Ottawa. That'll do it.
That'll do it.
Yeah.
Well, looks like you're stuck with us then, people. You're stuck with the Western Standard as the independent voice of the New West. We want to thank all of our current Western Standard members. If you're not yet a member of the Western Standard, please consider becoming a member. You can join, try it free for 15 days. If you don't like it in that time, you can cancel it at no charge. It's only $10 a month, $99 a year, to get you unlimited access to the Western Standard, supporting independent, bailout-free, Western-focused, Western-owned media. Well, I had fun. It's getting late. I'm hungry. Probably need a beer. Sure you guys too. Dave?
No
Cory?
drinking in the office, though.
I never allow that.
Yeah.
You know, we're like Tabor around here. They don't drink at Tabor, right?
Depends.
Not legally.
We're a dry office.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much, guys. Thank you all of you for joining us today, and God bless.